Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at Chapter 9 from the Road to Latin textbook, and specifically we're going to look at the story. There's only one in this chapter, and it's called Agricolae, which means the farmers. So like I always tell you, if you want to see the story in a different way, feel free to go to Nova Latin. You can see the Road to Latin textbook just unedited and digitized there, or you can see my own textbook where I've taken it and added my own grammar notes. If you look at my version, you can see the story with the cases highlighted, English translations, basically everything you need to feel comfortable and just see the story in a different way. So again, feel free to check it out. But either way, the first thing you got to do before you really dive into translating, like I always tell you, you got to learn the vocab. So learn the Chapter 9 vocab. There's really not a lot, actually. If I remember right, there's only 3 new vocab words in this chapter. So it's nothing you won't be able to handle. And the grammar, though, is a little trickier, and we'll talk about that in a second. There is a new set of grammar you got to have under control. So you want to take some time to learn it, make sure you've practiced it, do some practice problems, whatever you can do to feel comfortable so that when you dive in and actually read the story, you're not going in, starting from scratch. You could do it that way. I think it's a little easier to at least have the vocab so you know what the words mean, and the grammar will help you out too. So once you have those 2 things under control, you want to find someone you can read this story to. Like I always tell you, practice speaking this story out loud. Even if you don't have anyone to practice with, you can still read this story, but you want to read it. You want to speak the language, bring it to life. You don't want to shut off that part of your learning. And ideally, if you can find someone from class who could read it back to you, that'll really help you out. Listening, hearing the pattern, and just focusing on hearing Latin without any English is a really good way to catch the patterns and really understand what's going on in the story. So once you've done those things and you feel like you're in a good spot, you want to dive into the translation. But before we do that, like I said, the grammar is a little trickier, so I want to at least touch on it very quickly in this video. And I can't cover everything here, so if you want the full version of all my notes and everything like that, videos I've got, go to Nova Latin, and you'll see it all there. But in the short term, right, the quick version is we were talking about how to express location in this chapter with and without prepositional phrases, specifically without prepositional phrases, right, is kind of what we're getting at here. So what we talk about and what Road to Latin talks about is when you're referring to cities, towns, or small islands, and yes, they do make a difference because in Latin, if you're talking about a big island like Sicily, you do it slightly different. But when it's a small island, right, you use the accusative and ablative case, which we saw in a couple chapters ago, right? The past few chapters, we've been talking about prepositional phrases. If you're going towards something or away from something, ablative and accusative. So you don't actually need a preposition to express this motion, right? So if you use the accusative case, for instance, without a preposition, it's showing place to which, right? You're going towards something. So it basically does the same thing as if you had the preposition ad. So if you were to say Romam festinat, right? He or she hurries to Rome. There's no preposition there, but you have this accusative of Romam, right? So if you're not used to this, you might look and say, oh, he or she hurries Rome, like thinking it's a direct object, but it's not. Since you're talking about the name of a town or a city here, it's expressing motion toward, right? The place to which you are going, right? Is kind of the idea. So you don't need the preposition ad here. You can just put Roma in the accusative, Romam, and it's expressing something very similar. So it's not too difficult to figure this out. The same goes for the ablative. If you use the ablative case without a preposition, you're showing place from which. So if you were to say Delo ambulat, you're saying he or she walks from Delos, right? Delos is a small island off of Greece. So since Delos is in the ablative, I'm saying that I am going away from Delos. Okay, that's the short version of it. And you'll see examples as you go through this chapter. The trickier part is something called the locative, which is an extra case in Latin that, sometimes textbooks kind of gloss over it. I'm glad that we're talking about it in Road to Latin just because you see it, but it is a little weird, so it takes some getting used to. But when you're talking about a city, town, or a small island, and you use the locative case, right, without a preposition, you're showing place in which. So not toward or out of, but in or at is kind of the idea. So the tricky thing about the locative is it looks exactly like the genitive in first declension, which is all we've seen so far. So it has the AE ending, which is going to throw you off at first. The way to remember it is it's used when you're talking about a city, a town, or a small island. Okay, and it has to be singular. So if you're doing plural, you'd use the ablative here. But to show place in which, right, you're talking about a singular city or town, like in this example, Rome, you would say Romae habitat, When you have that, you're saying he, she, or it lives in Rome or at Rome. Romi here is locative from the Latin word for a place, right? Because you're showing that you are at that place or in that place. So it's a slightly different idea of expressing where you are. And again, there's no preposition involved here. But the way to tell that you have a locative is, again, you're talking about a city or a town. You don't have a preposition, and you have something that looks genitive, but genitive makes no sense, right? So you wouldn't be saying he, she, or it lives of Rome. Like, it just doesn't work, right? It's not going to be dative, to or for Rome. That's when you have the locative case. It takes a little bit of getting used to. And again, if you want to check out my textbook, Nova Latin, I put in more notes to help you practice this and kind of see it a little bit. But I'll point it out in the story as we go, because we do use the locative at least a few times. And I'll color code it slightly differently so that when you're looking at my cases highlighted, you can see it a little bit easier. Okay? But I think we're in a good place to start translating. Like I said, once you feel like you have all that under control, the vocab, the grammar, you'll be ready to go. So the story starts with a new character. You have Nasica, right? Nasica est Agricola Italiae. So Nasica, there's our character, is a farmer of Italy, right? A farmer of Italy. So just like a Roman farmer is the idea, an Agricola. Casa Agricolae non est proxima Romae. So here you're saying the house of the farmer, right, genitive, Agricolae, is not, non est, proxima, is not nearby. So here we have the word Romae. Now, again, we've seen that it could be nominative plural, not that there would be more than one Rome. It could be genitive singular, dative singular, or even locative, that sneaky new case we just mixed in. The thing giving it away, though, is Romae, right? Or sorry, not Romae, is proxima, rather. So proxima, nearby, is one of those special words that takes the dative case. So you have to be nearby to something, which makes Romae dative. So you're saying the house, or the cottage maybe, of the farmer is not close to Rome, right? So he doesn't live near Rome, which makes sense. You wouldn't be in a city, you'd be out in the fields. Then you have sed Nasica Romam saepe ambula. So, but Nasica, this character, this farmer, often, saepe, ambulat, walks, right? Often he walks. Romam. Here we have the accusative case without a preposition. We're going to translate it as motion to something. So to Rome. It's the name of a city. It's accusative. There's no preposition, right? If you're walking, you have that motion verb. It means you're going to be walking towards something. This is what we're talking about in this chapter, the idea of using, expressing kind of motion or place without a preposition. Okay, so you're saying, but Nasica often walks to Rome. Nunc Agricola uvas Romam portat. So now the Agricola, there's your subject, the farmer, portat, he's carrying, right? And you can see him in the picture off to the right, he's carrying something. What is he carrying? You have two words here that are accusative. One of them is going to be your direct object, the thing that he's carrying. Uvas means grapes. That makes the most sense. He's carrying grapes because he's a farmer. The reason Romam is not a direct object here is because you can't carry a city. It just doesn't make any sense. So why is Romam accusative? Again, you're trying to express that motion toward without having a preposition. So you're trying to say that he's walking to Rome, right? It's that idea of place to which, you might say. So he's walking to Rome and he's carrying grapes, right? So now the farmer, again, the translation is now the farmer is carrying grapes to Rome, right? He's on his way there. Then it continues. You have nunc olivas Romam portat. So now, and again, nunc here, it means like now he's doing one thing, and now, meaning at a different time, he's doing something else. So the second nunc is saying now he's carrying olivas, olives, to Rome, right? Because he's a farmer. So he's got grapes, he's got olives, and he brings them to Rome a lot, okay, to sell them. Makes sense. Then you have incolae Romae uvas et olivas in tabernis vident, okay? So the incolae Romae, the inhabitants of Rome, right? So the people who live there, they vident, they see, okay? So again, the NT on vident is telling you they see. So the inhabitants of Rome, they see the grapes, the uvas, right? And they see the olivas, right? The olives. So they see the grapes and the olives in tabernis, in shops. It's ablative because you're saying it's inside the shops. Okay, so we're using the preposition. It's plural. They're in the shops. I'm not talking about, a city or town. So it's not the time when I wouldn't use a preposition. I'm saying in the shops. Okay, so that's when the inhabitants see him. Then you have uvai et olivai, incolas Romae delectant. So the uvai, the grapes, and the olivai, the olives, right? The olivai, the grapes and the olives delectant, they delight. Who do they delight? The incolas Romae. They delight the inhabitants of Rome. Okay, so the people are delighted, they're happy, right, when they see these goods coming in, right? It delights them, makes them happy. Incolae nasicae pecuniam dant. So the incolae, the inhabitants, give, dant. When you have that verb of giving, again, you're anticipating at some point using a dative. You have to give something to someone. So you're saying, what do they give? Pecuniam, there's your direct object. The inhabitants are giving money. Who are they giving it to? Nasicae. So nasicae is dative here. They're giving it to Nasica. So again, the AE ending can be a couple of different cases, but the context here with the verb of giving, dant, is telling you that it's going to be an indirect object. It's going to be dative case. Okay, so they give him money. He gives them grapes and olives. Then we go on to the next paragraph, and this is the first part of paragraph 2. You have Romae sunt multae tabernae. So here we have our first instance of the locative. So what's going on here? Well, Romae has an AE ending. It's not going to be nominative plural because there's not more than one Rome. Genitive doesn't make sense. Of Rome just really doesn't make sense. The rest of the sentence says there are multae tabernae, many shops. Okay? So what's Romae doing here? I'm trying to say where these many shops are, right? I'm kind of talking about the location, and I'm referring to the city, right? So again, when we have a city or town, and we're trying to express this idea of place in which, right, where something is happening, you might say, that's when you use the locative case. And the locative has that AE ending. It looks exactly like a genitive singular. So we're saying in Rome or at Rome. In Rome probably works best here. In Rome, there are many shops, right? This is an example where the locative comes in, but even if you didn't know what the locative was, you could probably figure out that you're trying to say where the multae tabernae are, where the many shops are, right? There in Rome. Then you have Nasica, tabernas libenter intrant, okay? So Nasica is my subject, okay? What's he doing? He's intrant, he enters. Libenter here means like gladly, right? Happily or gladly. So Nasica gladly enters the shops, the tabernas, right? He goes into them. Then you have statuae pulchrae et columnae albae quoque sunt Romae. Okay? So it's telling you what other things are in Rome, Romae. So that last Romae is also locative, right? Because you're talking about what things are in Rome. And it starts with statuae pulchrae, beautiful statues. It's nominative plural. And columnae albae, white columns, right? So beautiful statues and white columns, quoque, also are in Rome. Right? So quoque sunt Romae means they also are in Rome. Again, Romae is that new locative case because you're showing a place in which something is happening, and you're referring to a city, right? And it's singular. So you're going to use this locative ending. Then we continue with Agricola in viis ambulat et statuas et columnas libenter vide. So Agricola, the farmer, right, Nasica, the farmer, ambulat in viis, he walks in the streets, right? It's ablative plural because it's just showing that he's in the streets, he's walking along, having a good time, right? Nothing crazy. So it's not showing any real motion here. It's more showing the position of being in the streets, right? More than going out of or away from something. Then you have what he does when he's walking the streets. He videat, he sees. What does he see? Et here, the correlatives mean both and. So it's both statuas, statues, and columnas, columns, right? So he sees these things as he's walking along. Remember the beautiful statues and the white columns? He's seeing both while he's walking through the streets. And again, libenter just means happily or gladly, okay? So he's walking through the streets after he sold all his stuff, and he gets to see all these cool things. Then we continue. This finishes off the second paragraph. You have tandem nasica Roma ad casam parvam properat. So finally, or at last, meaning after all this is done, Nasica, right, the farmer that we've been talking about, he hastens, properat, right? So he kind of hastens from Rome, away from Rome. This is the ablative without a preposition, right? You're talking about a town, you're trying to show a place from which, right? So he's going from Rome. So you translate this and say, he hastens from Rome ad casam parvam, to his small casam, his small house or cottage, okay? And the word his is kind of implied here, okay? So after he's done with everything, he leaves. Then you have Saipe Agricola, Palam Noam, et Soleas Novas, Roma ad filiam portat, quod nasica filiam maxime amat. Okay? So it's talking about why he did this. So it says, often the Agricola, there's your subject, the farmer, you have to go all the way to portat, he carries. What does he carry? A palam noam, a new pala, a new cloak. And soleas novas, new sandals, right? From Rome, there's your ablative without a preposition. You're trying to express place from which. So he carries them from Rome ad filiam, to his daughter, right? Filiam is accusative because you're showing motion toward. He's going to his daughter. So why does he do this? Because, quote, Nasica, the farmer, right, Nasica, he amat filiam maxime. He very much loves his daughter. So he brings her new stuff every time he comes back from the city. So now we come to the last paragraph. And you have Agricolae, Graeciae, quoque olivas et uvas habent. So Greek farmers, we kind of switched gears here, and we're talking about basically different farmers, right, in a different place. So you're saying Greek farmers, quoque, also habent, have. What do they also have? Olivas, olives, et uvas, and grapes, right, just like the Roman ones do. So you have quo Agricolae olivas et uvas portant. So where, quo means like where do the Agricolae, the farmers, portant, carry? Where do they carry their olives and their grapes, right? Well, we get our answer in the next line. You have Athenas olivas et uvas portant, right? They carry their olives and grapes to Athens. So Athens here is accusative because, again, I'm talking about a city. I'm trying to show that it's placed toward something. So I don't use that preposition, but I need it to be accusative case because I'm still going towards Athens. A way you could figure this out, again, if you're confused, you can't carry Athens, so it doesn't really make any sense. They're carrying the olives and grapes to Athens. And don't get confused, by the way, that Athenas is plural. Athens is a singular city, but a plural noun. It has to do, if I remember right from my days in ancient Greek, when you're talking about the city and the surrounding areas in ancient Greek, you would pluralize it. That's why even in English it's called Athens with the S. And the same happens in Latin too. So it's really talking about the city and the area around it, and you end up with these pluralized forms of Greek cities. So don't get confused by that. It's just one place. There's not more than one Athens. Then we have interdum, feminae cum agricolis, Athenas, ambulant, et corbulas plenas rosarum portant. Okay? So interdum means meanwhile. Okay? So it continues on and it says, that meanwhile, or sometimes rather, not meanwhile. So sometimes the feminae, the women. So sometimes women, ambulant, they walk, subject and verb. Cum agricolis means with the farmers. So sometimes women walk with the farmers, and they also walk Athenas to Athens, right? Again, there's no preposition because I'm talking about a city and I'm showing place to or toward. So they also walk to Athens, and portant, they carry corbulas plenas rosarum. So corbulas are small baskets, and they're small baskets, plenas, full. Usually when you have that word plena, right, in this case plenas, you have to be full of something. We use the genitive to show that. So small baskets full of roses, okay? So they walk with the farmers, and they're carrying these small baskets that are full of roses. Then we finish off that last paragraph. You have Athenes sunt multae statuae. Okay, so here we have another ablative kind of on its own, and you're trying to say in Athens. So this is an interesting idea to just get square. We had said that if you're in somewhere and you're talking about a city, it should be locative, right? But not when it's plural. When it's plural, it stays ablative, just to be confusing. And remember, Athens is a singular place, a city, but it's got a pluralized name. So when you say in Athens, it's Athenes, ablative plural, but you're still trying to show just like the location of where it is, if that makes sense, right? And you don't need a preposition to do it. You can just say Athenes. So in Athens, there are multae statuae. There are many statues. You have feminae, statuas libenter ornat. So the women, they gladly, libenter, they gladly ornat, they decorate the statuas, the statues. So women gladly decorate the statues. Athenes est magna Minervae statua. So in Athens, again, there's Athenes. It's the ablative showing place in which. It's not locative because it's plural, right? Because the word Athens, the name Athens is plural. So in Athens, there is a magna statua, a big statue. Minervae here has to be genitive. It's a statue of Minerva, right? In ancient Greek, she's called Athena, right? So Minerva is just the Latinized version of it, which makes sense because Athens is her city. So there's a large statue of Minerva. Okay. Minerva est dea sapientiae. So Minerva is the dea, is the goddess of wisdom, sapientiae, genitive. She's the goddess of wisdom, which is true. That's one of the aspects of Minerva or Athena, right? Feminae statua Minervae saepe ornat. So women often decorate, saepe ornant, the statuum, the statue of Minerva. Again, it's going to be genitive here because it's the only thing that makes sense, right? It can't be nominative, plural, dative doesn't work. It's just showing whose statue it is. So the statue of Minerva, they often decorate. Noctu Agricolae et feminae Athenes ad casas properant. Okay, so at night, again, we'll learn what noctu really is. It is actually ablative, but ignore it. Just think of it as a vocab word. So at night, the farmers, the Agricolae, and the women, the feminae, they properant, they hasten, right? They hasten Athenes. Here, again, we have an ablative used without a preposition. And if you're confused, because we just said it could show they're either in Athens or from Athens. When this happens, and I explain this on my textbook, right? You have to let the context guide you. If they're hastening ad casas, right, to their houses, the houses we just said, they don't live in the city. You can tell by the context you'd hasten away from something, right? It wouldn't be into, or else it wouldn't be ablative. But you're not saying they're hastening inside Athens. They're hastening from Athens. The context is really guiding you to this idea that they're leaving the city of Athens and they're going back ad casas to their cottages, okay? So whenever you run into this problem where you're seeing an ablative here, there's no preposition, try both options. Are they hastening inside Athens to go to their cottages? Or did we just say farmers don't live in the city? They'd be going from Athens back to their casas. That's the one that makes the most sense. So the context will kind of guide you to the right answer. So at night, they leave the city and they go home. Feminae Athenis parvas Minervae statuas ad filias portant. So the women, the feminae, they carry, portant. What do they carry? Parvas statuas Minervae. They carry small statues, parvas statuas, of Minerva, Minervae. They carry small statues of Minerva, Athenes, from Athens. Again, it makes the most sense that they're going from Athens because they just left. Ad filias, to their daughters. So again, the context tells you that they're leaving Athens and going to their daughters who are at home in the casas, right? And they bring them these small statues of Minerva. Okay? So this chapter is a little tricky just because you have so many ideas of motion into or from, and there's no prepositions involved. But once you get to the basic uses and the basic rules, that if you're trying to express, motion from something, or rather motion to something, to which, it's going to be accusative, no preposition. If you're trying to show place from which, it'll be ablative without a preposition. And if you're trying to express place in which, it's either going to be locative or ablative, rather, depending on if it's singular or plural. And it's always in reference to cities, towns, and these small islands. That's where you start using these terms without a preposition. Okay, so hopefully that made some sense and you were able to work your way through. The more you practice it, the better off you're going to feel about it and the more comfortable you'll be. But this is one of those chapters where you might have some questions. If you get stuck and have any questions at all, feel free to put your question down in the comments and I'll help you however I can. But your best bet would be to go back, read through the grammar on my textbook, read through, look at the videos I posted, all the notes, do some practice problems, reread the story if you have to, because the more you read it and practice it, the more comfortable you're going to feel with translating it and understanding what's going on here. Good luck.